Hello, welcome back. This is a preview for Lab 9. Just as a quick aside for the labs, I am trying to work with someone for a way that we can host the Java labs online so that you can run them just like the Flash or the HTML5 simulations, but I don't know a time frame on that. So labs 7 and 8, which officially aren't due for a while anyway, um, like there's not there you're able to turn them in up until the end of the class. Um, those ones I'm not enforcing any late policies on at all. Um, and honestly, as long as you're getting your labs in within a day or so of the actual deadlines, I'm also really not paying that much attention to it because I don't know what your all schedules are like. And so some of you may be working and not able to get things in on the day that they're officially due. So as long as you're in a reasonable time frame, that's fine. The Java simulations, again, we're trying to work on something, but failing that being able to be a workable solution, what I'll probably end up doing is I will just record, like screen record me doing the lab without saying much of anything. I'll just be like, I'm on question 3 now, and I'm doing what it's asking you to do, and then you can just uh, do the lab from those videos. That's the absolute fallback. We're trying a couple of things, but if that doesn't work out, then that's all I can do, really. Anyway, for this lab, this is a Flash lab, so it should be a lot easier to get running, though if you use Firefox or Chrome, and probably almost any browser now, you do have to give it permission to run, but that's not that difficult. So before we actually start the lab, there are two quick questions. The first one asking you to differentiate the difference between a natural frequency and a driving frequency. Natural clearly is just the frequency that a system wants to oscillate at anyway. Driving frequency is a frequency from an external disturbance. So like if you are sending in sound from a speaker and it's a different frequency than the natural frequency, that would be your driving frequency. And then using those definitions of natural and driving frequency, how would you define resonance? So this exercise I've got open in a tab already. I haven't gotten to the point where I actually run it, but I've got the page that this links to. What this will have is a bunch of masses on springs, and we'll start with one, and then we'll go to some of the multiple mass systems. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to go ahead and hit run here. It tells you in Flash or in Chrome, you'll get this type of message. How you get around that, if you're not familiar, is you come over here onto the lock tab where it says Flash ask. Just tell it to allow, and then close that. It'll tell you to reload the page, and then it'll work fine. So you're going to start off with this one mass here. The driver frequency is set to 1 hertz. The amplitude we don't care about. You don't have to touch that at all throughout the entirety of the experiment. We're going to go ahead and then just turn that on after we give it a little tug. So I'm going to give it a little tug and let it oscillate, just so you can get the idea of how quick that is. And then it wants you to turn the driver on and compare the frequency of the oscillations with the driver on to what it is when you turn it off. You should see that those are fairly similar, which is our condition for resonance. If we're going to drive a oscillating system at or near its natural frequency, you'll get this behavior where the spring starts to get a lot more powerful in terms of the oscillation. I do want to go quickly up and check something there. Yeah, we're not going to touch the damping. This is so that basically so that we don't get the thing going out of control. So questions 2 and 3 are referring to a changed frequency. So I'm going to change this to 1.25. You can do it by rotating, or you can just, I think you can just type the number in. And I'm going to go ahead and turn this on. So now you can tell that there's some sort of a mismatch between those frequencies, because at 1 hertz, that oscillation got really big. You can still see there's some oscillating going on, but these are definitely out of time with one another. And this is a very small oscillation, and the amplitude is not consistent. You can see sometimes you get a little bit bigger oscillation than others, but clearly we're not at resonance there. And then the next 2 questions ask you to turn the frequency down to 0.75. If I remember right, I'll check in a second. Next 2, yeah, 0.75. And again, you're comparing to the first case where you had it at 1 hertz, not the 1.25 you just did. So you're going to look at the motion here. Again, comparatively, it's a lot smaller. This is a little bit more consistent than it was for the 1.25. It pretty much just follows with the driver, and there's not a lot of extra oscillation. So this one is fairly consistent in the amplitude, maybe small fluctuations, but clearly not at resonance. So then we're going to switch to multiple resonators. The first one, we are going to go to 10 resonators. So we're going to reset this real quick just so that nothing is moving. I'm going to go to 10 resonators. And we want to have, if I remember right, it's the same mass constant, same mass to begin with. Same mass M, yes. So, same mass M. Now what we've got going on here, resonator 1 is the least stiff spring, and resonator 10 is the stiffest spring. The masses are all the same at 1 kilogram, but the spring constants get progressively higher as we go across. So using that information, that K is the smallest for 1 and K is the largest for 10, with the same mass, what you want to do is go back and look at your mass on a spring resonance and figure out which one of these will have the highest frequency based on the difference in the spring constant. So you'll make a prediction which in 1 or 10 has the lower frequency, and then 1 or 10 has a higher frequency, because it's saying rank them in frequency from smallest to largest. And then you'll describe why you made that choice. So then what we're going to do is test your prediction by turning the resonator on. So when I go ahead and turn this on now, give it a few cycles, you'll see that I've got a fair amount of resonance here in 1 at this 1 hertz frequency. And then what you're going to do is slowly sweep through the frequencies. You'll notice that once I get away from 1, that one becomes less consistent. And then you're going to find the frequency where you get the biggest oscillation for 2, record that. So I had 1 hertz for 1. For 2 right now, I would have about 1.49 or 1.5 hertz. And then you're just going to keep sweeping through the frequencies slowly till you find it for 3, and so on and so on. And you're just going to find all these frequencies for each of them. You'll notice as I turn it up, progressively different ones will oscillate more, and eventually you'll get all the way to number 10, and there's a little bit of feedback between those, but um, you'll find that and you'll record it. Once you have your frequencies for each of the springs, you'll compare it to your prediction, and then based on what you learned, whether your prediction was correct or incorrect, you'll talk about why it's valid. And what I would do at this point is go find the equation that describes mass on a spring resonance and look at what the equation actually is, and then say, based on that equation, say, oh, a higher K means this, and then compare to what you see as you do the experiment. So the next thing we're going to do is very similar. We're going to take 10 masses still, but we're going to go to same spring. So these all have the same spring constant now. We have the biggest mass here at 1 and the smallest mass here at 10. And then based on this decreasing mass, you're going to make a prediction about which one has the lowest frequency and which one has the highest frequency. And I'm going to go ahead and reset this now. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Put this back to same spring K so that we start at 1 hertz again. So you'll make your prediction about which one will have the smallest frequency and why that is, just like you did in the previous case where the spring constants were changing. This case, the spring constants are the same, but the mass is changing. And then you're going to basically do the exact same thing that you just did. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this on again. Let it oscillate. We've got 1 in resonance here. Then you'll sweep through the frequencies until you find the resonant frequency for each of them. So just like the previous one, you'll get a resonant frequency for all 10 until you've got them all in resonance. And once you have that, then you're done for this part. Then you're gonna look at your results and say whether your prediction was correct or not again. And same question about the validity of the simulation. Again, I would reference the mass on a spring oscillator to see whether the simulation makes sense. And then the very last one here, this is pretty straightforward. What you're going to do is 10 resonators with the same frequency. I believe it's going to be 1 again, so I'm going to set this all the way back. Oops. I'll check the frequency here in a sec. So we've got the same mass. I'm going to set the damping constant down to 0 and driver at 3 hertz. So I'm going to set this down to 0, or as close as I can get it. I'm going to set this to 3 hertz. Okay. And then what it asks you to do is basically just give these a bunch of random motions relative to one another, different amplitudes, different sizes, directions. It doesn't matter exactly how you do it. And then we're going to turn the driver on. And you'll notice that it didn't matter what direction they were going to begin with. Eventually, these all sync up with one another. There's a bunch of YouTube videos where a behavior like this is displayed with metronomes that are all set to the same frequency, but they're on a platform like this that has a little bit of motion to it, so that as the metronomes move back and forth, they're jostling the platform, and eventually a bunch of random start positions for the metronomes will sync up and all move as one. This is the same kind of idea here, because I have all these masses and they do affect the platform. I'm just going to stop there and then turn this on. You'll notice they all start kind of random, but then they all sync up, though this one is a little bit bigger because I had sprung that one quite a bit. So that one, that last question, you're just describing what happens when you turn it on initially, how does it go from being out of sync to being in sync, essentially, it's the whole thing there. So that's it for this one. It's pretty short again. It can take a little time to measure those frequencies, but you'll probably notice the pattern after 2 or 3 resonators and be able to get through them fairly quickly. This one, again, pretty simple. Should be able to get it to run for everyone without a whole lot of problem. And yeah, that's it. So I'm working on the Java stuff. Hopefully I can get a solution this week. If not, I'm probably just going to record videos for 7 and 8 and put those up so that I'll probably put them on the intro video page, separate it out, and basically say this is the video where I'm doing the lab in more detail to give you a little bit more time to observe than I do in these intro videos, if it comes to that. Again, I've had discussions with several of you on this. I don't have the solution, but as soon as I do, I will let the class know so that you can come back to those and get them done. I'm not enforcing any late penalties at all. So even if I don't have a solution until next week, and 7 was technically due, I guess at that point 2 weeks ago, there won't be any penalty on that because it's something that the school closing prevented the easy way to get around it, which is just go use school computers. But since that's not an option right now, we have to work with what we've got. So probably get to chapter 10 recording a little bit later today. It may not be up for a little while because that one might be a 2-parter. It is a little bit on the longer side. So have a good day and good luck.